Unaware of wife's $100 million inheritance, he dumped her after she became paralyzed and lost her job. She had given him everything: her time, her love, her strength. But when tragedy struck, and a terrible accident left her paralyzed, his vows of forever turned to dust. The moment she lost her job, the man she trusted to be her rock became her executioner. "You're nothing but a burden now," he hissed, as he shoved the divorce papers into her trembling hands. "I won't waste my life carrying dead weight. You can rot alone." Instead of choosing compassion, he chose cruelty. Instead of standing by her side, he walked away with another woman. At her weakest hour, he stripped her of dignity and love, leaving her to survive in silence. He thought her story was over, but what he didn't know was that the woman he cast aside, the one he called worthless, carried a secret: an inheritance worth $100 million. A fortune that would not only rebuild her shattered world, but also return her power in a way no betrayal could ever destroy. Sometimes the people you discard when they fall are the very ones destined to rise higher than you can ever imagine. Sometimes the shadow of the broken becomes the light you can never outrun. This is the story of betrayal, pain, and ultimate revenge, a story where love is tested, cruelty is exposed, and justice finds its voice. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button. And as you listen, tell us in the comments where you're watching from. The room was dim, but her eyes sparkled with pride as she watched him pace with his new business idea scribbled across a notepad. Claire had worked a 12-hour shift at the bank that day, but she still sat on the couch, nodding at every word her husband Daniel said. "I just need one more investor," Daniel insisted, waving his hands. "If this works, we'll never have to live paycheck to paycheck again. We'll be unstoppable." Claire smiled, though her body ached with exhaustion. "You'll get there, love. You always do. I'll cover the bills until things turn around." On the outside, it looked like devotion. A perfect wife cheering on her husband's dreams. Neighbors admired their bond. Colleagues envied Claire's supportive marriage. But behind the curtains, the truth was different. For every long day Claire worked to pay rent, Daniel spent hours in cafes with friends, talking big but producing little. She never complained. She cooked his meals, folded his laundry, and slipped him cash when he came home empty-handed. At night, when her legs trembled from fatigue, she told herself this was love, that someday he would see her sacrifice and repay it with equal devotion. But the imbalance grew heavier. Daniel began expecting her support, not appreciating it. "Don't nag me about money," he snapped one evening when she reminded him of overdue bills. "You think you're better because you have a job? Just wait. My time is coming." The words stung, but Claire swallowed the pain. She whispered to herself that he was only stressed, that real love meant patience. Her mother's worried voice on the phone echoed in her head. "Claire, a marriage where one builds and the other only takes will break you." She ignored it, convincing herself that she and Daniel were different. Yet deep inside, small cracks began to form. Every dismissal chipped at her heart. Every careless remark pressed weight onto her spirit. She smiled less, laughed less, carried more. To outsiders, Claire was the picture of devotion, but in her quiet moments, she felt the slow erosion of her worth. One night, after paying the last of their savings toward his failed pitch, Claire crawled into bed. She reached for Daniel's hand, seeking comfort. He pulled away. "Don't touch me. I'm thinking." The rejection hit harder than his words. In the silence of that dark room, Claire realized the truth she had been avoiding. Her love was being drained like water poured into cracked earth. No matter how much she gave, it would never be enough. Her heart trembled, but she still held on. Little did she know, this imbalance was only the beginning. The storm that would break her world was already gathering, closer than she imagined. It was raining the night everything changed. Claire had stayed late at work, finishing reports her exhausted eyes could barely focus on. The streets were slick, The headlights blurred, and as she crossed the road to catch her bus, a horn blared. Tires screeched. The world spun. A delivery truck hit her. The impact was violent. Her body thrown against cold pavement, breath ripped from her lungs. Pain shot like lightning through her spine, her legs refusing to move. Sirens screamed in the distance as strangers gathered, their voices muffled by the storm. "Stay with us!" a man shouted, pressing his jacket under her head. But Claire's vision darkened, her body shaking from fear. At the hospital, bright lights pierced her eyes as doctors worked frantically. Hours blurred into minutes, until at last, the words she dreaded filled the room. "The accident has damaged her spinal cord. She may never walk again." Daniel stood in the corner, his face pale. For a moment, Claire thought he would break down and hold her hand. But instead, his jaw tightened. "So, she's paralyzed?" His tone was flat, more shock than sorrow. "Yes," the doctor said gently. "She will need intensive care, rehabilitation, and a strong support system." Claire's heart raced. A strong support system. That meant Daniel. The man she had carried all these years would now have to carry her. At first he tried to play the role. He told the nurses, "I'll take care of her." But Claire noticed the cracks immediately. The way he sighed when lifting her into a wheelchair, the sharpness in his voice when she needed help in the middle of the night. One evening, she asked softly, "Will you still love me like this?" Her voice trembled with fear. Daniel didn't answer. He stared at the TV, pretending not to hear. Fear settled heavy in her chest. Her mother called daily, her voice full of worry. "Claire, I'll come stay with you. You don't need to carry this alone." But Claire, still clinging to the hope of her husband's devotion, said no. She was vulnerable, trapped in a body that no longer obeyed her, relying on a man who once relied only on her. Every request for help felt like another test, and every sigh from Daniel revealed the truth. His loyalty was fragile. One night, as she struggled to shift in bed, she heard him on the phone in the next room. "I can't do this anymore," Daniel whispered harshly. "She's dead weight. You don't understand. My whole life is slipping away because of her." Claire's stomach dropped, her blood running cold. He wasn't just frustrated. He was looking for a way out. And then she heard a woman's voice reply, soft, tempting, dangerous. "I'll be here for you, Daniel. You deserve better." Claire froze. The betrayal was no longer just in her fears. It was real. Claire's recovery at home was supposed to be a new chapter of healing. Instead, it became a slow-motion nightmare. On the first day back, Daniel wheeled her into the apartment, dropped her in the living room, and muttered, "Don't expect me to do everything. I have my own life too." His words sliced deeper than the pain in her spine. The fridge was nearly empty, unpaid bills piled on the counter, and her phone buzzed with reminders from the bank. Her job at the bank had already been taken by someone else. She had missed too many days, and they couldn't hold her position. For the first time in years, she had no income. "Daniel, can you help me call HR? Maybe I can still," she began, voice hopeful. "Claire, stop!" "They don't want you anymore," he interrupted. "Face reality. You can't work. You can't earn. And now I have to carry everything." But he didn't carry anything. Instead, he spent his days disappearing with friends. Nights coming home late smelling of perfume that wasn't hers. He left her alone for hours, sometimes forgetting to leave food where she could reach it. The financial pressure mounted. Rent notices turned red. Creditors called daily. When Claire asked about the bills, Daniel snapped, "If you hadn't gotten yourself crippled, we wouldn't be in this mess." Each word eroded trust. Each day chipped away at hope. She tried reaching out to neighbors, but whispers followed her. That poor woman, such a shame. And her husband? Always with someone new. The pity stung almost as much as the isolation. Her mother begged again, "Claire, come stay with me. Don't let this man bury you in shame." But Claire, still clinging to vows she had once believed sacred, replied, "Mom, he's my husband. He'll come around. He has to. Yet deep inside, she knew the man she loved was already gone. The worst night came when she woke thirsty and tried to wheel herself toward the kitchen. The chair jammed against the carpet, and she fell hard to the floor, pain radiating through her fragile body. She cried out for Daniel. Minutes passed, no answer. Finally, she dragged herself across the cold tiles with her arms, sobbing, until she reached the counter and pulled down a glass of water. When Daniel finally stumbled in at 3 a.m., drunk and laughing on the phone, he stepped over her without even looking down. That was the moment something inside Claire broke. She realized she wasn't just neglected. She was abandoned in every way that mattered. The next morning, Daniel dropped another envelope in her lap. "They're shutting off the power if we don't pay. What are you going to do about it?" Her trembling fingers opened it, eyes burning. For the first time, she didn't feel sorrow. She felt fire, because abandonment has a way of burning away illusions, and Claire was starting to see the truth. The knock on the door startled Claire. She was alone again, hungry. The apartment quiet, except for the hum of the failing refrigerator. She wheeled herself slowly to the door and opened it to find Melissa, her old college friend, someone she hadn't seen in years. "Claire!" Melissa exclaimed, stepping inside with a warm hug. "I just heard what happened. I can't believe Daniel didn't tell me sooner. You poor thing." For a moment, relief washed over Claire. A familiar face. Someone from her past who once knew her before all the pain. Melissa carried groceries, placed them on the counter, and filled the room with chatter that drowned the silence. But beneath the smiles was something Claire couldn't place. Melissa's eyes lingered a bit too long on Daniel's photo by the wall. And when Daniel came home later that evening, the shift was undeniable. Melissa's voice softened. Her laughter grew lighter. Her hand brushed his arm as they talked about the old days. Daniel didn't pull away. In fact, he leaned in, soaking up the attention. Claire's heart clenched. Later, when they were alone, Melissa squeezed Claire's hand. "Don't worry. I'll be here for both of you. I'll help you with whatever you need." It sounded comforting. It looked like friendship. But the next weeks revealed the cracks. Melissa's visits grew frequent, always at times when Daniel was home. She brought Claire small gifts, but lingered more and more in the kitchen with him. One afternoon, Claire overheard them laughing. She wheeled herself closer, careful not to make a sound. Melissa's voice was playful. "You deserve someone who appreciates you, Daniel. Not someone who drags you down." Daniel chuckled low. "You think I haven't thought about that?" Claire's chest tightened. Breath caught between shock and betrayal. Melissa, her friend, was crossing lines she never should. And Daniel wasn't stopping her. That night, Melissa leaned close to Claire's chair, her tone dripping with false sympathy. "You're so strong, Claire. Honestly, I don't know how you manage. If it were me, I'd probably give up." The words stung, a backhanded compliment laced with envy. Melissa wasn't here to build her up. She was here to position herself, to see how far Daniel's attention could tilt. Claire clung to misplaced trust, telling herself Melissa was just being kind, just filling gaps Daniel left wide open. But deep down, she knew something dangerous was growing. The breaking point came on a stormy evening when Claire woke to hushed whispers in the next room. She wheeled herself silently to the hallway and froze. Melissa was there, in her house, in her living room, pressed against Daniel, her lips grazing his cheek. Claire's voice cracked the air like thunder. "What are you doing in my home at this hour?" The room went silent. Melissa stepped back, guilt flickering across her face before vanishing behind a smirk. Daniel didn't even look ashamed. He looked annoyed. And in that chilling silence, Claire realized the truth. Betrayal wasn't knocking at her door. It was already inside. Claire never imagined the man who once vowed to cherish her would stand across the room, arms wrapped around her so-called friend. Yet here it was, undeniable. "Daniel!" Her voice cracked, trembling with both rage and grief. "In my house? With her? After everything?" Instead of remorse, Daniel sneered. "You make it sound dramatic. What do you expect, Claire? You're not the same woman I married. You can't walk. You can't work. You can't give me anything anymore. Melissa makes me feel alive. The words struck her harder than the accident itself. Her hands gripped the armrest of her wheelchair, nails digging into the worn fabric. Melissa smirked, brushing imaginary dust off her blouse as if Claire were nothing but an inconvenience. "You promised for better or worse," Claire whispered, her voice breaking. "You swore before God." Daniel laughed bitterly. "That was before you turned into a burden. I didn't sign up to waste my life pushing a chair." The humiliation cut deep. Claire had endured neglect, endured silence, endured sighs and cold shoulders. But this was betrayal laid bare, without shame, without cover. Melissa tilted her head, her voice sugar-coated with cruelty. "Claire, maybe it's time you faced reality. Daniel deserves happiness. You've had your turn." Tears blurred Claire's vision, but she refused to let them fall. With what strength she had left, she forced herself to speak. "Leave my house, both of you." Daniel's face hardened. He walked to the bedroom, gathered a duffel bag, and began stuffing it with clothes. "Fine. If you want me gone, I'm gone. But don't come crawling to me when you realize you can't survive without me." Melissa trailed behind him, glancing back at Claire with triumph in her eyes. The betrayal of a friend and a husband twisted together in one venomous image she knew would haunt her forever. Minutes later, the slam of the front door echoed through the apartment. Silence followed, thick and suffocating. Claire's heart pounded in her chest, not from fear, but from the ache of broken vows echoing in her soul. She wheeled herself to the window, staring into the night. Rain poured down the glass, mirroring the storm inside her. For years, she had been his strength, his support, his foundation. And now, when she needed him most, he had chosen someone else. Her phone buzzed. A message lit the screen. "Don't call me. It's over." No apology. No hesitation. Just cold departure. Claire's chest heaved, her tears finally falling. The man who once promised eternity had discarded her like an old coat. She pressed her forehead against the cold window pane, whispering into the night, "God, don't let this be the end of me." And yet, as she sat alone in the hollow silence, the weight of betrayal crushing her. A knock echoed on the door, sharp, urgent, unexpected. Her heart skipped. Who could it be at this hour? The urgent knock echoed again. Claire wiped her tears, wheeled herself shakily toward the door, and opened it to find her mother, Margaret, standing in the rain with eyes full of worry. "Baby, I knew it. I knew something was wrong," Margaret whispered, stepping inside and pulling her daughter into a fierce embrace. She smelled of lavender soap and determination. The sight of her mother's face broke the last of Claire's defenses. Sobs tore out of her chest. "He left me, Mom. He walked out with Melissa. I have nothing left." Margaret held her tighter, her hands trembling as much as Claire's voice. "You are not nothing. You are my daughter. You are stronger than this pain, Claire." But despair wrapped around Claire like chains. "I can't walk. I can't work. I can't even feed myself without struggling. What kind of life is this?" Her mother knelt in front of the wheelchair, locking eyes with her. "It's a life worth fighting for. You may not see it now, but I see it. I see the fire in you. You didn't survive that accident just to waste away in misery." For the first time in weeks, Claire felt something stir beneath the layers of grief. A flicker, small but real. Her mother's faith was like a candle in her darkness. That night, as Margaret made her soup and tucked her in, she whispered again, "Don't let his betrayal be your ending. Let it be your beginning." Claire stared at the ceiling long after her mother had fallen asleep on the couch. Her heart still ached. Her body still felt broken, but her mind began whispering questions she had pushed away. What if I'm not finished? What if there's more for me? The phone rang at dawn. Margaret answered, then handed it to Claire. "It's your aunt's lawyer. He says he has something important to discuss with you." Confusion clouded Claire's face. "My aunt? But she passed away years ago." The lawyer's voice came clear over the line. Mrs. Claire Thompson, I represent your late Aunt Evelyn's estate. She left behind certain provisions, but they must be discussed in person. Are you able to meet? Claire's heart pounded. Her Aunt Evelyn, distant, private, but always quietly kind. What could this mean? Margaret squeezed her hand. Answer him, Claire. This could be something. Fear warred with hope. Part of her wanted to refuse, to stay curled in despair. But another part, the part her mother saw, was ready to rise even if only a little. Her voice trembled, but she forced the words out. Yes, I'll meet you. The line went silent for a beat. Then the lawyer replied, Good, because this meeting will change everything. Claire's hands shook as she lowered the phone. She didn't know it yet, but the flicker of hope she had felt was about to ignite into a fire that would remake her entire life. The law office smelled faintly of leather and polished wood. Claire wheeled into the room with her mother by her side, her hands clammy from nerves. Sitting behind a mahogany desk was Mr. Reynolds, a silver-haired lawyer with kind eyes that seemed to measure her carefully. Mrs. Thompson, he said, rising to shake her hand, your Aunt Evelyn spoke of you often, though you may not have realized it. Claire blinked, startled. She did? We barely saw each other. Mr. Reynolds nodded. That was her way. Private, guarded. But she left something behind for you, something she believed would only be revealed at the right time. He slid a thick envelope across the desk. Claire's hands shook as she opened it. Inside was a letter, written in her aunt's elegant handwriting. My dearest Claire, life has a way of breaking us before it builds us. If you are reading this, I trust you have faced your breaking. I have left you a legacy, not for comfort alone, but for purpose. You are the heir to my estate, valued at $100 million. But this gift comes with conditions. It must be used to build, to restore, to give life where others see only loss. Let it shape you into who you are meant to be. Claire's breath caught. $100 million. Her eyes darted to her mother, who covered her mouth in shock. This isn't real, Claire whispered. It can't be. Mr. Reynolds leaned forward. It is very real. But your aunt insisted on one condition, secrecy. You must not reveal this inheritance publicly, not yet. If certain people know, they may manipulate you, or worse, destroy your chance to fulfill her wishes. Claire's thoughts spiraled. She had gone from begging for food in her fridge to sitting on a fortune she never imagined. Her heart pounded with cautious hope, but fear crept in too. What if Daniel found out? What if Melissa sniffed her way into this? Mr. Reynolds' voice cut through her panic. Your aunt wanted you to heal first. Then, step by step, we will release the funds, guiding you through investments and projects. But Claire, remember, this is not just about wealth. It's about destiny. She stared at the letter again, tears filling her eyes. Destiny. For so long she had seen herself as broken, discarded, forgotten. Could this hidden blessing be her chance to rise? Margaret placed a firm hand on her shoulder. Baby, this is your turning point. Don't rush. Don't tell Daniel. Don't tell anyone who hurt you. This is yours, and you must guard it. Claire nodded slowly, her trembling lips forming the words, I won't waste it. I'll protect it. But even as hope flickered to life, the shadow of Daniel's betrayal loomed in her mind. If he discovered her secret, he would not stop until he took everything. And as fate would have it, Daniel was already watching her more closely than she realized. 3 weeks had passed since Claire discovered her inheritance. She had told no one except her mother and the lawyer, just as instructed. Outwardly, nothing had changed. She still sat in her small apartment, still struggled with simple daily tasks, still looked, at least to Daniel, like the woman he had abandoned. So when he showed up at her door, flowers in one hand and fake concern plastered across his face, she immediately knew something was wrong. Claire, sweetheart, Daniel said, kneeling beside her wheelchair as though the last few months hadn't happened. I've been thinking. I made mistakes. I shouldn't have left. Melissa, she was nothing. You're my wife. We can start over. Her heart twisted, not from longing, but from anger. He hadn't even bothered to hide the rehearsed tone. His eyes weren't filled with love. They were scanning the room, searching. "Daniel," she said flatly, "what do you want?" He feigned shock. "What do you mean, I want us? Don't you miss me? We can get past all this if you just forgive me." Claire narrowed her eyes. "You told me I was dead weight, that I ruined your life. Did you forget?" His smile flickered. I didn't mean it. You twisted my words. You always do. You make me sound like a monster when all I ever wanted was to push you to be stronger." Gaslighting. Clear as daylight. She had once fallen for it, doubted her memory, bent under his manipulations. But not anymore. "Daniel," she said slowly, her voice firmer than she thought possible. "You left me when I needed you most. You humiliated me, and now you show up because what? Your new life isn't as shiny as you hoped?" His face hardened. "Don't talk to me like that. You think anyone else will want you? I'm your best option." That was the moment something shifted. Claire straightened in her chair, fire in her eyes. "No, you were my worst mistake, and I will never let you treat me that way again." Daniel stood, anger flashing. "So that's it? You're really throwing us away? After all I did for you?" Claire let out a bitter laugh. "All you did for me? You mean abandonment? Betrayal? Mockery? You did nothing but break vows." For the first time, she saw fear flicker in his eyes, not of her, but of losing control over her. He tightened his fists. "Fine, but don't forget, Claire, I know you. I know how weak you are. You won't last without me." She looked him dead in the eyes. "Watch me." Silence thickened the room. Daniel stormed out, slamming the door so hard the walls shook. But as he left, he muttered under his breath, "Something's different with you." "I'll find out what it is." Claire's chest tightened. He had sensed the change, the secret she had to guard at all costs. The next morning, Claire woke to a string of messages on her phone, all from Daniel. "I couldn't sleep last night, thinking about us. I know I've been selfish, but I'm ready to change. Please, Claire, meet me for lunch. Just one chance to show you I'm different." Her stomach churned. She knew his pattern too well. Hurt her, disappear, then return with hollow words dressed as apologies. Still, curiosity tugged at her. She wanted to see for herself how far his act would go. At the cafe, Daniel was already waiting, a bouquet of roses on the table, a forced smile on his face. "Claire, you look beautiful," he said smoothly, though his eyes flickered to her wheelchair with barely hidden discomfort. She folded her arms. "Why am I here, Daniel?" He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "Because I can't stop thinking about you. Melissa, she wasn't what I wanted. She was a mistake. I realize now you're the only woman who ever believed in me." The words might have melted her once, but now they rang hollow, rehearsed, calculated. She stayed quiet, letting him speak. He reached for her hand. "I know things were hard, but we can rebuild. We can start fresh. I just need to know. Do you have anything saved up? Maybe a little tucked away we could use to get back on our feet." There it was, the greed bleeding through the cracks. His apology wasn't about her. It was about access, about control. Claire pulled her hand back slowly. "Daniel, why are you really here? Is it love or money?" His smile faltered. "Claire, don't be cruel. I'm here because I care. But come on, we can't survive on nothing. You must have something. Savings, inheritance, maybe even insurance from the accident?" His tone sharpened at the last word, probing like a blade. Her chest tightened. He was fishing. His apology was nothing more than a mask. For years, she had been naive enough to believe his promises, but wisdom had been carved into her by pain. She saw him now for what he truly was, a man driven not by love, but by greed. She smiled faintly, though it didn't reach her eyes. "I have something, Daniel, but it's not for you." His brows furrowed. "What's that supposed to mean?" Claire pushed away from the table, her wheelchair gliding toward the door. "It means you'll never use me again. Not my heart, not my body, and certainly not my money. Daniel's voice rose, sharp with frustration. Don't walk away from me, Claire. You owe me after everything I've done for you. She turned back, eyes steady. No, Daniel, you owe me, and someday you'll understand just how much. The cafe fell silent, all eyes on them as Daniel's face turned red with rage. But beneath his anger was something else, suspicion. He now knew Claire was hiding something, and that suspicion would soon drive him to desperate measures. After the confrontation at the cafe, Claire returned home shaken but strangely lighter. She had faced Daniel's greed and survived it without breaking. Yet the loneliness of her small apartment still pressed against her like a heavy fog. That evening, there was another knock on her door. This time, it wasn't betrayal waiting on the other side. It was Michael, her childhood friend. He stood with a paper bag of groceries in one hand and a nervous smile on his face. "Hey, Claire," he said softly. "I heard, well, everything. I didn't come to pity you. I came because I miss my friend." Claire's throat tightened. Michael had always been steady, a quiet presence during their school days. While Daniel had dazzled her with charm and big promises, Michael had simply been kind. He unpacked the bag without asking, filling her fridge with essentials. "I figured you could use some fresh fruit and bread." Nothing fancy. Tears pricked her eyes. No one had thought of her needs so simply, so selflessly, in months. "Thank you," she whispered. Michael shrugged. "It's nothing, but I don't want you to think you're alone in this." "You're not." The words wrapped around her like a blanket. For the first time since her accident, she felt dignity stirring. Not from wealth, not from secrecy, but from genuine kindness. The days that followed were different. Michael came by after work, helping her reach shelves, fixing the broken latch on her window, even laughing with her over old stories. His presence wasn't suffocating like Daniel's. It was freeing. "You still have that fire in your eyes, Claire," he told her one evening as they sat on the porch. "Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. You're stronger than half the people walking out there." His encouragement planted something deep inside her, a seed of belief that maybe she could build again. Not just survive, but contribute, create, inspire. Her neighbors began to notice the change too. Instead of whispering pity, they started stopping by with meals, offering rides, asking if she needed help. What once felt like humiliation turned into community. Her isolation cracked open into connection. Claire realized dignity didn't come from being perfect or whole. It came from choosing to stand, even in a wheelchair, with her head high. But even as hope returned, danger lurked in the shadows. One evening, as Michael helped her lock up, he frowned. "That car's been parked across the street 3 nights in a row. Same guy inside, watching." Claire's heart skipped. She didn't have to guess who had sent him. Daniel wasn't done, and he was closer than she thought. The next morning, Claire woke with determination burning in her chest. She was tired of being watched, tired of being pitied, tired of being seen as fragile. It was time to prove, to herself most of all, that she was not broken. She wheeled to the kitchen and pulled out a notebook her aunt had once given her. On the first page, she wrote 3 words in bold: "Start again today." Her hands trembled, but she began listing ideas, small things she could do from her chair. Banking had sharpened her skills with numbers, so why not freelance bookkeeping? Why not consult for small businesses in her community? When Michael came over later that day, she showed him the notebook. "Do you think anyone would hire me like this?" He grinned. "Claire, not only would they hire you, they'd be lucky to have you. Let's make a plan." Together they set up a simple office space at her kitchen table. Michael brought his old laptop, helped her design flyers, and printed them at a local shop. Within a week, Claire's ad, affordable bookkeeping and financial help, was taped to church boards, grocery stores, and community centers. The first call came from a small bakery struggling with expenses. Claire spent hours poring over their numbers, suggesting cuts, reorganizing debts, and setting up a savings plan. When she presented it, the owner clasped her hands. "You saved my business. I don't know how to thank you." Claire rolled out of that meeting with tears in her eyes. It wasn't just about money, it was purpose. For the first time since the accident, she felt useful again. Soon, word spread. A tailor, a corner store, even a taxi driver sought her guidance. Each small win restored a piece of her confidence. Her reputation grew, and with it came momentum. The same neighbors who once whispered behind closed doors now knocked on hers with respect in their voices. Michael watched it all with quiet pride. "See, I told you. You're unstoppable." Claire smiled, the weight on her chest finally lifting. "I feel alive again, Michael. Not because of the money, but because I matter." But beneath the joy, she stayed cautious. Daniel's shadow still lingered, and the parked car outside proved he was watching her rise. One evening, after closing her laptop on another successful client meeting, Claire glanced out the window. The car was still there, only this time the driver wasn't hiding. He rolled down the window, lit a cigarette, and stared straight at her. Her blood ran cold. Because in that smoke-filled glare she saw Daniel's hunger. He had discovered that she was rising, and he wasn't about to let her rise without him. The bakery Claire had helped weeks earlier sent her a basket of fresh bread and a note. "Because of you, my children eat tonight. Thank you." Claire held the note in trembling hands, her heart swelling. It wasn't the money that mattered. It was the ripple effect. Her pain, her loss, her fight for survival. It was now healing others. That night, she opened her aunt's letter again. This gift must be used to build, to restore, to give life where others see only loss. The words lit up differently this time. She realized her inheritance wasn't just a secret safety net. It was a calling. The next morning, she instructed Mr. Reynolds, the lawyer, to release a small portion of her funds. Quietly, anonymously. "Set up an account," she said. "Send scholarships to single mothers who want to finish school. Pay hospital bills for accident victims. No one should know it's me." Mr. Reynolds nodded approvingly. "That's exactly what your aunt envisioned. Stewardship, not indulgence." Soon, anonymous envelopes began arriving at homes across the city. Families on the brink of eviction found their rents mysteriously paid. A young father fighting cancer discovered his medical debt erased. A homeless shelter received a truckload of food and blankets. Claire read the stories in the paper, tears streaming down her face. She didn't need recognition. Healing others gave her meaning far beyond wealth. Every act of generosity was a stitch repairing her own wounds. Michael noticed the change. "You smile more now," he said one evening as they packed donated supplies. "It's like your pain is turning into fuel." Claire nodded. Maybe that's what it was always meant to be. Not to destroy me, but to teach me how to lift others. Her mother, watching from the couch, whispered proudly, "That's my daughter." But even as Claire poured herself into giving, shadows stirred. One night, as she wheeled into the lobby of her apartment, she overheard two neighbors whispering, "Someone's out there helping all these families. They say it's an anonymous benefactor with deep pockets. Wouldn't surprise me if it's Claire. She's been busy lately, hasn't she?" Claire's chest tightened. The secrecy her aunt insisted on was slipping. If people began connecting dots, Daniel would hear, and he would come storming back. That evening, as she locked her door, her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number appeared. "You think you can hide your fortune from me? I know you're sitting on money. We'll talk soon." Claire's blood ran cold. Daniel knew. The anonymous donations had begun to ripple through the city like waves. But Claire realized something important. Giving money wasn't enough. If her inheritance was to become a legacy, it had to create second chances, not just relief. So she called Mr. Reynolds. "I want to start something permanent," she said firmly. "A foundation, one that empowers people who've been overlooked. Single parents, accident survivors, people society calls broken. I want them to feel seen." Within weeks, the Evelyn Hope Foundation was born, named after her late aunt. Claire remained behind the scenes at first, letting her lawyer and a small team handle logistics. But she personally interviewed applicants, choosing candidates who reminded her of herself, people who needed not just money, but dignity. One of the first hires was Lila, a young mother who had been fired after missing shifts to care for her sick child. Claire looked into her tear-filled eyes and said, "You deserve a chance to stand again. Will you join us?" Lila broke down sobbing. "No one has ever trusted me like this." Claire also recruited Jamal, a mechanic recovering from an accident that left him partially disabled. His hands shook as he signed the papers. "You're the first person to see me as more than my injury," he whispered. Each hire became more than an employee. They became ambassadors of resilience. The foundation grew into a community, a circle of survivors turned builders, proving that brokenness could birth strength. At the launch event, journalists gathered, curious about the anonymous benefactor funding such an ambitious mission. Claire stayed in the shadows, but she listened as one of the new hires stood at the podium and said, "We were discarded, forgotten, left behind. But someone believed in us. This foundation is proof that pain can become power. That legacy is not about wealth. It's about lifting others." The crowd erupted in applause. Claire's heart swelled as she realized her story was no longer just hers. It was now the story of many. And together, they were building something no betrayal could erase. Michael leaned close and whispered, "Look at what you've done, Claire. You're not just surviving. You're leading." Tears filled her eyes. For the first time since her accident, she didn't feel broken. She felt whole. But the celebration was short-lived. As the cameras flashed and the speeches ended, Claire spotted a familiar figure at the back of the room. Daniel. His smile was thin, his eyes sharp, his presence like poison in the air. He clapped slowly, deliberately, before slipping out the door. Claire's chest tightened. He had seen enough. The secrecy was gone, and Daniel would not rest until he claimed what he believed was his. Claire was in her office when the storm hit. Not outside, but inside. The door slammed open, and there he was. Daniel. His face flushed with fury, his eyes burning with entitlement. "So it's true," he spat, pacing the room. "All this time, you've been sitting on millions. You let me walk away. You let me suffer, while you were playing Saint of the Broken? That money should have been ours, Claire." Claire stayed calm, her hands folded on the desk. "No, Daniel. It was never ours. It was mine. And it was meant for purpose, not greed," he scoffed, slamming his fists onto her desk. "Don't lecture me. You wouldn't have survived a day without me. I carried you, remember? I deserve my share." Her chest tightened, not from fear but from the bitter irony. "You carried me? Daniel, you abandoned me when I couldn't walk. You humiliated me when I couldn't work. You broke vows you swore to keep. And now you dare claim ownership of what was never yours?" The staff outside froze at the sound of raised voices. Michael rushed in, but Claire raised her hand, stopping him. "It's okay, Michael. I need to face this myself." Daniel leaned closer, his voice low, venomous. "You owe me, Claire. You think you can just erase me from your life and build this empire? Without me, you'd still be rotting in that apartment." Claire's eyes hardened. "And without me, you'd still be chasing dreams you never finished. Don't twist history. You didn't make me. You tried to destroy me." Silence thickened. Then she took a deep breath. "If you came here for forgiveness, I'll say this. I forgive you. Not for you, but for me. I won't let your betrayal chain me anymore." His eyes flickered with surprise, but before he could twist her words, she continued firmly, "But forgiveness is not reconciliation. Forgiveness does not mean access. You are not welcome here. Not in my office, not in my foundation, not in my life." Her staff, inspired by her firmness, stepped into the doorway like silent guardians. Michael placed a protective hand on her chair. "You heard her. Leave." Daniel's face turned red. He spat on the floor, muttered curses, and stormed out. But his final words chilled the room. "You'll regret shutting me out. You'll see. I'll find a way back in." The door slammed, echoing like thunder. Claire leaned back in her chair, her body trembling. She had drawn her boundary, claimed her safe space, but the storm wasn't over. Because men like Daniel didn't fade quietly into the night. They circled, waiting for weakness. And as she looked at her reflection in the glass window, Claire whispered to herself, "I must be ready. For him, and for what comes next." Months passed, and Claire's foundation flourished. The bakery she'd saved was now supplying bread to shelters. Young mothers returned to school on scholarships. Accident survivors found meaningful jobs. Her story, once whispered in pity, was now spoken as inspiration. Claire no longer lived in the shadows of betrayal. She had transformed into a leader, not by seeking power, but by carrying purpose. Her wheelchair was no longer a symbol of weakness, but of resilience. People didn't see what she had lost. They saw what she had built. Her office walls were lined with photos of those the foundation had helped. Smiling children, families holding keys to new apartments, workers proudly holding their first paychecks. Claire often gazed at them and whispered, "Aunt Evelyn, I hope I've honored you." Michael was always nearby, steady as ever. He had become more than a helper. He was her partner in building, a chosen family figure who filled her days with encouragement. Her mother, too, was her constant anchor, her proud witness. One quiet evening, as the sun cast golden light over the city, a knock rattled the door. Michael opened it, and there stood Daniel. But this time, the fire in his eyes was gone. His shoulders slumped, his suit wrinkled, his voice hollow. "Claire, please." His words cracked with desperation. "Melissa left me. The business deals failed. I have nothing. I was wrong. I need you. Please take me back." The room fell silent. For a brief moment, Claire saw the man she had once loved, the one she had cooked for, sacrificed for, believed in. But then, like a wave, the memories of betrayal returned. The night he walked out, the words that scarred her, the way he called her dead weight. Her staff glanced nervously, waiting. Michael's fists clenched at his side. Claire wheeled forward until she faced Daniel directly. Her voice was calm, steady, but unshakable. "Daniel, you taught me the cost of misplaced love. You taught me the danger of giving everything to someone who only takes. And yes, I forgive you, but not to welcome you back, only to release myself from the chains of your cruelty." Tears filled his eyes. "Please, Claire, I have no one." She looked at Michael, at her mother, at the photos of smiling faces on the wall. Her voice softened. "You're wrong. I have someone. I have many someones, people who chose me, who lift me, who stand with me. I don't need you, and I will not let you drag me down again." Daniel fell to his knees, begging. But Claire lifted her chin, dignity radiating like light. "You may leave with nothing, Daniel, because that's what you gave. I leave you with grace, but no space in my future." Michael gently closed the door behind him, shutting out the echoes of the past. Claire turned back to her team, her family, her mission. She smiled through tears. "Let's keep building." And in that moment, the moral order was restored. Pain had birthed purpose, betrayal had birthed justice, and the woman once discarded had become a beacon of hope multiplied. He kicked out his wife and spat on her at family dinner, unaware she owned 90% of their company. The banquet hall was filled with chatter, silverware clinking, and polished smiles. Then silence struck like thunder, when Mark, standing at the head of the table, leaned across and spat directly into his wife Julia's face. "You disgust me," he roared, his voice echoing off the marble walls. "From this moment, you're no longer my wife. Pack your bags and leave tonight. You don't deserve a seat at this table." Around them, relatives shifted uncomfortably, some hiding smirks, others pretending not to see. No one spoke up. Not his mother, who nodded in approval. Not his cousin, who chuckled under his breath. Even Julia's supposed friends lowered their eyes, afraid to lose their place in Mark's circle. Julia's heart pounded, but she did not weep. She dabbed the spit from her cheek with a napkin, lifted her chin, and gave a faint smile that unsettled him. For inside her burned a secret that none of them knew. Mark believed he had destroyed her dignity in front of the world. What he did not know was that the woman he had just humiliated owned 90% of the company he bragged about. The empire he thought was his throne stood on ground that belonged to her. Tonight he spat on her. Tomorrow he would crawl at her feet. This is the story of betrayal turned into power, and humiliation reborn as justice. Before we continue, tell us where you are watching from in the comment section. Like, share, and subscribe to this channel. The grand dining room buzzed with laughter as waiters poured red wine into crystal glasses. Mark sat at the head of the table, his tie loosened, a smug grin plastered across his face. Julia sat quietly beside him, adjusting her simple blue dress, ignored by most of the guests. Then it happened. Mark slammed his fist on the table so hard that plates rattled. He stood, his voice sharp enough to silence the entire hall. "You've embarrassed me for the last time, Julia." His hand shot out, pointing straight at her. Before anyone could react, he leaned forward and spat across the table. The spit landed on her cheek. Gasps broke the room. Forks froze midair. Aunts, cousins, and business partners looked on in stunned disbelief. But no one moved. Julia blinked, her chest heaving. She slowly reached for her napkin, dabbing her cheek with a grace that only enraged him more. "You don't belong here," Mark sneered, his words dripping with venom. "You're a parasite living off my success. Tonight, in front of everyone, I strip you of the honor of being my wife. Pack your things and get out of my house." Whispers slithered around the table. His mother smirked, proud of her son's dominance. His cousin chuckled and clinked glasses with a friend, enjoying the spectacle. Even Julia's so-called best friend, Anna, looked away, pretending to reach for her drink, too cowardly to stand for her. Inside Julia, shame and fury wrestled, but her face showed only calm. Her silence was not weakness, it was defiance. Every cruel word, every mocking smirk carved itself into her memory like stone. Mark lifted his glass high, as though making a toast over her humiliation. "Here's to freedom. Here's to a wife who finally admits she's beneath me." Laughter broke out, awkward and forced, but no one dared oppose him. Julia rose to her feet, her chair scraping loudly against the polished floor. She steadied herself, her hands trembling, but her eyes locked with Mark's. For the first time, he felt a flicker of unease. "Are you deaf, Julia?" his mother barked. "Get out! You've wasted enough of our air." Julia gathered her dignity, turned slowly, and walked toward the door. Each step was heavier than the last, but her silence echoed louder than Mark's insults. The room buzzed again, mockery, whispers, cowardly giggles. Yet Julia heard none of it. She was already making a vow deep in her heart. This was not the end. As the door closed behind her, Mark leaned back in triumph, clinking his glass with Anna, who gave him a nervous smile. He didn't notice Julia's faint smirk as she left. For while he thought he had destroyed her, she had just made the quietest but most dangerous decision of her life. Outside in the cold night air, Julia whispered to herself, "One day, Mark, you'll regret spitting on me. And when that day comes, I won't need to raise my voice. The truth will destroy you." The night air bit at Julia's skin as she left the dinner hall, her heels clicking against the marble steps. The humiliation still burned, but in her silence, a strange calm settled over her. She had been spat on, cast out before family and friends, but she was not broken. Not yet. Her phone buzzed. Anna's name flashed across the screen. With trembling fingers, Julia answered. "Julia," Anna whispered, her voice dripping with feigned concern. "Are you okay?" "Mark didn't mean it like that. He's under so much stress. You know how men are." Julia closed her eyes, holding back a bitter laugh. He spat on me, Anna, in front of everyone. Oh, Julia, don't be so dramatic, Anna replied softly. He's only frustrated. Maybe if you tried harder to support him, things would be different. Don't throw your marriage away over one heated moment. Gaslighting. Julia heard it clearly. Anna wasn't calling to comfort her. She was calling to make her doubt her own pain. Meanwhile, inside the house, Mark's mother clapped him on the back. Well done, son. You showed her who holds the power. A wife should know her place. Mark grinned, basking in her approval. His cousin chimed in, Julia never fit into this family anyway. She's lucky you kept her this long. Back in her car, Julia stared into the dark street. Betrayal surrounded her, not only from her husband, but from every institution around her. Family, friends, even the social circles that once pretended to respect her. They all backed Mark because he was loud, arrogant, and male. She, the quiet one, was easy to erase. But Julia refused to vanish. Her silence tonight was not weakness. It was strategy. She thought of the papers locked in her study drawer, the documents no one else cared about. Proof that 90% of the company was hers, inherited quietly from her late father, whose foresight she had barely understood at the time. She whispered into the darkness, Patience, Julia. Not now. Not yet. But soon. Her driver glanced at her through the mirror, startled by the steel in her voice. He had never heard her sound like that. As the car rolled past the glowing city lights, Julia replayed Anna's words in her mind. He didn't mean it like that. Don't be dramatic. Lies layered over cruelty. Even her so-called best friend had chosen Mark's side. Her hands tightened into fists. Tonight she had been the victim. But she would not remain the victim for long. The car pulled into her driveway. A shadow waited at her door. Mark himself, drunk on arrogance, ready to twist the knife deeper. He hadn't finished with her humiliation yet. The porch light cast a pale glow as Julia stepped out of the car. Standing at the doorway, Mark leaned casually against the wall, a glass of whiskey in his hand, his tie loose, his smirk cruel. So, he sneered, slurring slightly, still playing the victim? You think anyone cares about your little pouty face? They laughed with me tonight, Julia. You saw it. Even your friend Anna. They're on my side. Julia's heart clenched, but she kept her face calm. I don't want to fight, Mark. I just want peace. He laughed, stepping closer. Peace? You're nothing without me. You live in this house because of me. You wear those dresses because of me. You sit at my table because I allow it. Don't ever forget that. Behind the words lay manipulation. He wanted her to crumble, to doubt herself, to cling to him despite the abuse. Later that night, Julia's phone buzzed again. Anna's name flashed across the screen. Julia hesitated before answering. Julia, Anna said, her tone syrupy sweet, I just wanted to check on you again. You know I care. I only want what's best for you. Don't leave Mark. You'd regret it. Men like him, they always come around. But Julia caught the hesitation in Anna's voice, a pause, a softness that wasn't for her. She remembered the way Anna's eyes lingered on Mark during the dinner, the way her hand brushed his arm a second too long. Seeds of temptation, seeds of betrayal. Thank you, Anna, Julia replied, forcing her voice flat. I'll keep that in mind. The moment the call ended, Julia let out a shaky breath. The mask of loyalty was clear. Anna was no friend. She was circling like a vulture, waiting for Julia to fall so she could take her place. The next morning, Mark's cousin Samuel stopped Julia in the hallway. He leaned close, his voice low and taunting. Don't take last night too hard, Julia. Mark's just under pressure. You know how businessmen are. Besides, he smirked, if you can't handle him, there are plenty of others who will. His words were a dagger cloaked in sympathy. Everyone around her wore masks, of loyalty, of care, of support. But beneath them lay manipulation, greed, and betrayal. Julia's silence remained her only shield. She had to wait. She had to endure. But as she stood alone in her room, the papers hidden in her drawer seemed to whisper to her. You are stronger than they know." That night, Julia walked into the study and caught Anna's reflection in the glass cabinet, snooping through her things, searching for secrets that didn't belong to her. Julia froze in the doorway of the study. The faint glow from the desk lamp lit Anna's face, her hands rifling through drawers. Papers shifted, folders opened, and Julia's heart hammered as she saw Anna's fingers pause dangerously close to the sealed envelope that carried the truth of her inheritance. "Anna," Julia's voice sliced through the silence. Anna jerked upright, her face flushing, a nervous laugh escaping. "Oh, Julia, I was just looking for a pen. Mark said—" Julia's eyes narrowed. "Mark said what?" Before Anna could answer, footsteps echoed in the hallway. Mark appeared, his shirt unbuttoned at the top, his glass of whiskey refilled. His eyes flicked from Julia to Anna, and a sly grin spread across his lips. "Julia, don't be so suspicious," Mark said smoothly, draping his arm around Anna's shoulders. "She's just trying to help me with some documents. You've been so distracted lately." Anna has been a real support. The warmth in his tone wasn't for Julia, it was for Anna. A calculated grooming, a deliberate seduction, and Julia saw it clearly. Anna lowered her gaze, pretending to blush, but her lips twitched with a smile she tried to hide. Julia stepped closer, her voice steady. "Support? Is that what you call sneaking into my study behind my back?" Mark chuckled, sipping his drink. "Don't overreact, Julia. Anna cares about me, about us. She sees how much pressure I'm under. Not like you, always sulking, always making me look bad. Maybe you could learn something from her." Anna's hand brushed Mark's arm in a gesture that was both innocent and intimate. Julia's stomach turned, but she forced her face into calm stillness. "You're right," Julia whispered. "I've learned more than you realize." Mark mistook her quiet for surrender. Anna mistook it for weakness. Both believed Julia was blind. But Julia's silence was gathering into a storm. Later that night, as Mark and Anna lingered in the living room laughing together, Julia sat alone in her room, staring at the sealed envelope in her drawer. Inside lay her father's legacy, the truth that would crush their arrogance. She could reveal it now, but she chose not to. Not yet. Justice delayed would be justice doubled. Downstairs, Mark's mother entered, her sharp voice praising Anna. "You're such a bright young woman, Anna. Mark deserves someone like you by his side. Julia never fit this family." Julia, listening from the staircase, pressed her hand against the wall to steady herself. Betrayal had fully taken root. Grooming, seduction, and whispered approval had already begun weaving the net against her. But nets can break. Julia turned back toward her room, whispering under her breath, "They think I'm powerless. But the day I open these papers, every smile at my expense will turn to ashes." The house was quiet after midnight. The laughter of Mark and Anna had finally faded into the walls, leaving only the faint ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall. Julia sat at her desk, the sealed envelope before her. Her fingers brushed across it gently, as if touching the key to her freedom. She pulled it open, the crisp sound breaking the silence. Inside were documents bearing her father's signature, notarized and stamped. 90% of the company's shares, hers. The empire Mark boasted about was, in truth, her inheritance. Julia read the papers over and over, the words burning into her mind. She could walk into the boardroom tomorrow, reveal everything, and strip Mark of his power in one stroke. But she didn't. She closed the envelope again, slipping it back into its hiding place. "Not yet," she whispered. "Justice comes sweeter when it ripens." The next morning, Mark swaggered into the dining room, Anna trailing behind with a forced smile of sympathy. "Julia," Mark said loudly, "I've decided you'll be moving out of the master bedroom. Anna deserves to stay closer to me. You can take the guest room upstairs." Gasps fluttered among the household staff. Julia simply nodded, her face calm. Her silence unnerved him, but he masked it with arrogance. Later, as Samuel dropped by, He clapped Mark on the back and sneered toward Julia. "You've done the right thing, cousin. Julia was never strong enough for you. But be careful. Quiet ones can be dangerous." Julia caught his gaze. "Thank you for the advice," she said softly, her tone carrying a weight Samuel couldn't quite place. In her room, Julia began to write. A journal. Each entry documented every insult, every betrayal, every witness to her humiliation. Not because she needed proof for herself, but because one day those words would read like an indictment. When Anna peeked into her room later that night, pretending to offer comfort, Julia smiled faintly. "Don't worry about me. I'm stronger than I look." Anna blinked, unsettled by the calm certainty in her voice. Downstairs, the staff whispered quietly as they cleared the table. "She doesn't cry. She doesn't break. She just waits," one said. "Like she knows something we don't." And she did. Julia's silence was her shield. Her patience was her weapon. Her secrecy was the rope that would one day tighten around Mark's pride until it snapped. Alone in her room, Julia pressed her hand against the drawer hiding the envelope. At that exact moment, Mark's footsteps thundered up the stairs, and the doorknob to her room began to turn. The ballroom shimmered with gold lights, velvet curtains, and the hum of expensive laughter. Mark strutted across the stage in his navy suit, Anna at his side in a glittering red dress. Cameras flashed. Applause erupted. It was the company's annual gala, and Mark was soaking up every ounce of attention like a king feeding on worship. "Ladies and gentlemen," he boomed into the microphone, raising his glass, "tonight we celebrate not just our success, but the future. Under my leadership, this company will expand into territories no one else dares touch. Risks? Bah! Risk is the path to glory." The crowd cheered politely, though Julia noticed the uneasy glances among the board members seated near the front. They shifted in their chairs, whispering about reckless spending and expansion. But none dared challenge him in public. His hubris cast a shadow that silenced common sense. Julia sat quietly at a corner table dressed in elegant black, unnoticed by most. Her calm eyes watched everything. Mark's swagger, Anna's staged smile, Samuel whispering into the ears of directors about bold investments. They all fed his ego like priests feeding an idol. Behind the mask of applause, cracks widened. One director muttered, "This isn't sustainable." Another whispered, "If only we had the power to stop him." Julia's lips curved in the faintest smile. "You do. You just don't know it yet." On stage, Mark pointed dramatically toward Anna. "And let us thank my dear friend Anna for her endless support. She has been by my side through every storm." Gasps and murmurs stirred the room. The insult was obvious. Julia, his wife, sat ignored while the mistress was glorified. Yet she remained still, sipping her wine, her silence louder than applause. Anna beamed, but Julia noticed her hands trembling as she held her glass. Being flaunted publicly carried its own cost. After the speeches, Samuel approached Julia, smirking. "Quite a show, isn't it? Mark's unstoppable. He's already planning 3 new ventures. You really should step aside before you embarrass yourself further." Julia tilted her head. "Unstoppable, you say?" Her calm tone made him falter. "Funny. I thought unstoppable men didn't need cheerleaders whispering in their ear." His smirk faded. For the first time, Julia saw unease flicker in his eyes. Meanwhile, in the boardroom whispers that followed the gala, concern deepened. Directors exchanged wary looks, some glancing at Julia as if sensing she carried a secret. Mark, however, basked in the limelight, blind to the storm brewing under his feet. His pride swelled, his arrogance soared, and Julia watched, recording every word, every boast, every reckless promise. The higher he climbed, the harder his fall would be. As Julia left the gala hall, she passed 2 directors, whispering, "If only someone had authority to stop him." Julia's faint smile returned. Soon, they would know she was that someone. The morning after the gala, Julia sat alone in the sunroom, the newspaper folded neatly in her lap. The headlines praised Mark's bold vision and fearless expansion. The photos showed him beaming beside Anna, her red dress glittering under chandeliers. Julia stared at the smiling image, her face unreadable. Mark stormed into the room, tossing his jacket onto a chair. His eyes glowed with self-satisfaction. "Did you see the coverage? The city knows I'm unstoppable. Investors are lining up. And you?" he sneered. "You just sat there last night like a shadow. Pathetic." Julia folded the paper carefully, her voice even. "I had nothing to prove." He laughed, mocking. "Nothing to prove? You have nothing, Julia. No voice, no wealth, no power. I'm filing for divorce, and when I do, you'll walk away with nothing but shame. Anna will stand beside me, not you." Her chest tightened, but she kept her composure. "Is that what you want?" she asked softly. "What I want," Mark growled, stepping closer, "is freedom. You've held me back long enough. A man like me deserves better than you." At that moment, Anna appeared in the doorway, her eyes wide, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "Mark, maybe you're being too harsh. Julia's just adjusting. Change is hard for her." But Julia caught the gleam in Anna's eyes. This was no defense. It was performance, designed to make her look fragile, incapable, unworthy. Mark's cousin Samuel joined in, grinning slyly. "He's right, Julia. Divorce might be best. Better for everyone." Julia's fingers curled against her lap. Their voices wove a net around her. Surface empathy from Anna. Opportunistic whispers from Samuel. Threats from Mark. They thought she would break, beg, plead. Instead, she lifted her chin. "If that's the road you choose, Mark, I won't stand in your way." His eyes narrowed, surprised by her calm. "You should be terrified, Julia. I've already spoken with my lawyer. Once the papers are ready, you'll be nothing but a memory." Julia stood, her voice steady. Sometimes memories outlast empires. She walked past him, leaving him frozen in confusion. Anna and Samuel exchanged glances, unsure what to make of her composure. Later that night, Julia pulled the sealed envelope from her drawer, laying it across her desk. Her hand hovered over it, tempted to reveal everything now. But she stopped. Timing was everything. Let them believe in her weakness a little longer. Just then, her phone buzzed. A message from Mark's lawyer. "Meeting scheduled tomorrow morning. Divorce papers will be prepared." Julia smiled faintly, whispering, "Good. Let's see who walks away with nothing." The boardroom gleamed with polished oak and shining glass. Mark strutted to the head of the table, slamming his briefcase down with the confidence of a king about to deliver commandments. Julia sat quietly near the end, her presence ignored, her silence mistaken for irrelevance. "Gentlemen," Mark began, spreading his arms wide, "we are about to secure our place in history. Expansion into 3 continents at once. Aggressive. Risky. But that's what makes it genius. Bold men win. Timid men rot." The board members shifted nervously. One cleared his throat. "Mr. Daniels, the debt we'd have to take on—" Mark cut him off with a laugh. "Debt is fuel! You're thinking too small. Look at me. Everything I touch turns to gold." He pointed toward Anna, who sat primly in the back, smiling as though rehearsed. "And with the right people by my side, I cannot fail." Julia watched quietly, her eyes fixed on the directors. Their discomfort was clear, their whispers hushed. They knew his arrogance was dangerous, but none dared stop him. Dramatic irony filled the air. For while Mark boasted of power and ownership, the true weight of the company rested in Julia's locked drawer at home. 90%, hidden, unacknowledged, yet absolute. Samuel leaned over and whispered in Julia's ear, smug, "Do you see how unstoppable he is? Even the board trembles. You're finished, Julia." She turned her head slowly, meeting his smirk with calm eyes. "Samuel, tell me, have you ever seen a man build a castle on sand?" He frowned, confused. Her words unsettled him, but he quickly laughed it off. You'll see. Mark's castle will stand forever." Mark wrapped up his presentation with dramatic flair, raising his fist high. "The future belongs to those who dare, and I dare everything." The room erupted into reluctant applause, half-hearted clapping masked as enthusiasm. Julia sipped her water, her face unreadable. To the board, she was invisible. To Mark, she was defeated. To Anna, she was already erased. But Julia carried a secret smile within her. Every boast Mark made was a rope tightening around his own neck. Every reckless word added weight to his eventual fall. The blind spot was his undoing. He believed she had no power. He believed the company was his throne. He believed loyalty was on his side. What he did not believe, and could not imagine, was that the quiet woman sitting at the end of the table owned him, and everything he claimed to rule. As the meeting adjourned, a director slipped Julia a folded note under the table. She opened it later in her lap. 5 words stared back at her. "Do you hold the key?" The living room glowed with firelight as Mark's family gathered for an evening celebration. Wine flowed, laughter echoed, but beneath it all simmered cruelty. Julia sat quietly on the edge of the couch, her hands folded in her lap, surrounded by faces that wore smiles sharper than knives. Mark raised his glass, smirking. "To family, who stand by you through everything. Unlike some people who drag us down." His eyes flicked toward Julia, and the room erupted with chuckles. Anna leaned forward with a sympathetic pout. "Oh, Mark, don't be so harsh. Julia tries her best. It's not her fault, she's delicate." Her tone dripped with sugar, but her words were poison. Mark's mother chimed in, "Delicate? Please, she's weak, always has been. I warned you, son. Julia was never fit for a man of your stature." Samuel added his sneer. "A woman like Julia would never survive in our world. She's lucky Mark kept her this long. Without him, she'd be forgotten in a week." The group chuckled, their laughter bouncing around Julia like stones hurled in a circle. Every voice worked in unison, mockery, shaming, character assassination. Julia's chest tightened, but her face remained still. Her silence unnerved them, though they mistook it for defeat. Inside, however, she felt each insult carve itself into her resolve like a chisel shaping stone. Mark leaned back, wrapping his arm around Anna. "She should be grateful. I gave her a name, a life, a seat at this table. Without me, she's nothing." Anna's hand rested delicately on his shoulder, her smile victorious. Samuel raised his glass again. "To Mark, the man who deserves better." The clique laughed louder, emboldened by their shared cruelty. Julia's eyes swept the room, her supposed friend betraying her, her husband flaunting arrogance, his mother fueling disdain, his cousin whispering poison. But Julia noticed something else. The staff who lingered at the edges, carrying trays and clearing glasses. Their faces were still, their eyes averted, but Julia caught one maid's glance, a quick flicker of sympathy. Silent witnesses, quiet recorders of truth. Julia stood slowly, her movements drawing the room's attention. "You've made yourselves clear," she said softly. "But remember this, every table turns. Every chair changes hands. And when it does, we'll see who still has a seat." The room fell silent for a heartbeat before Mark burst into laughter, joined by the others. "Listen to her. She thinks she's threatening us. Pathetic." They laughed harder, mocking her until the sound felt like thunder pressing against her ears. Julia walked toward the door, her steps steady. As she reached for the handle, she heard Anna's voice behind her, hushed but sharp. "She'll be gone soon, and when she is, I'll be the one they raise their glasses to." The boardroom was packed tighter than ever. Directors sat stiffly in their chairs, shareholders filled the side rows, and guests whispered in anticipation. Mark stood proudly at the head, his voice booming like a preacher at his pulpit. Anna beamed at his side, Samuel whispering encouragement in his ear, his mother nodding with smug pride. "Ladies and gentlemen," Mark declared, "today I make it official. The divorce papers are nearly complete. Julia is no longer part of my future. With her gone, nothing holds me back. I alone will take this company to the stars. Applause rippled, awkward but present. Julia sat at the far end of the table, dressed simply in a navy dress, her face calm, her hands resting lightly on a leather folder. A director cleared his throat nervously. "Mr. Daniels, before we proceed with this expansion, we need to confirm shareholder approval. Your controlling stake must—" Mark waved him off. "Controlling stake? Don't insult me! This company is mine." He puffed his chest, glaring down the table. "Julia here has no claim. She was just a wife, not a partner. Nothing belongs to her." The words landed like a slap across Julia's face. But instead of lowering her head, she rose slowly to her feet. The room stilled. Even Mark faltered for half a second. "Are you certain, Mark?" Julia's voice carried, calm and steady. "Are you sure nothing belongs to me?" Mark barked out a laugh. "Of course. You have nothing." Julia placed the leather folder on the table and slid it toward the directors. "Gentlemen, inside this folder are legal documents signed by my late father and verified by compliance. 90% of this company belongs to me. Not Mark. Me." Gasps exploded across the room. Directors scrambled for the papers, flipping through stamped pages, signatures, official seals. Their eyes widened. Murmurs rippled like waves. Mark's smirk shattered. "Lies! This is forged." The company secretary stood, adjusting his glasses. "These documents are legitimate. Verified, signed, and registered years ago. Julia Daniels is the majority shareholder." The board erupted in whispers. 90%! She owns everything. She can remove him. Julia straightened, her eyes on Mark. "You spat on me in front of family. You humiliated me, mocked me, discarded me. You thought I was powerless. But today, in front of this board, I strip you of the title you abused. Effective immediately, you are no longer CEO." The directors nodded, their voices joining one by one until the chorus became unanimous. "Agreed, removed, done." Mark's face drained of color. Anna shifted uncomfortably in her chair, slipping her hand from his arm. Samuel sat frozen, his smirk collapsing. Even Mark's mother's voice cracked. This can't be." Julia leaned forward, her tone final. "The empire you bragged about was never yours, Mark. It was mine. And now, I take it back." Mark collapsed into his chair, clutching the table for support. His voice cracked as he whispered, "Julia, you wouldn't do this to me." But Julia's calm eyes held no mercy. "I already have." The boardroom was silent except for the sound of Mark's shallow breathing. He slumped in his chair, his once proud shoulders sagging, his hands gripping the edge of the table like a drowning man clinging to driftwood. The board members, one by one, turned away from him. Their allegiance had shifted in a single stroke. Julia stood at the center now, the leather folder tucked beneath her arm. She wasn't shouting, she wasn't boasting. Her voice was calm, steady, a melody that carried more weight than any of Mark's roars ever had. "This company," she began, "was built on trust, on integrity, on hard work. My father left me this legacy not to be squandered by arrogance, but to be grown with wisdom. I will honor that." The directors nodded. "We will support you," one said firmly. Another added, "Your leadership is what we need." Their words confirmed what the documents had already declared. Julia was now the recognized head. Across the table, Anna slowly slid her chair back. She glanced at Mark, but his head was bowed in shame, his eyes glassy. Without his power, he was nothing to her. Quietly, she slipped out the side door, abandoning him without a word. Samuel tried to speak, his voice trembling. "Julia, I didn't mean—" Julia cut him off with a single glance. "You meant every word you said when you mocked me, and you will live with the memory of it." Samuel sank into silence. Mark's mother rose shakily, pointing a trembling finger at Julia. "You can't do this. He's my son. He deserves respect." Julia's eyes softened, but her words were unyielding. Respect is not inherited, it is earned, and Mark lost it the moment he spat on me in front of everyone. Today I choose dignity over cruelty. This company will not be ruled by arrogance any longer." The staff outside the boardroom whispered as Julia passed. Some smiled faintly, others bowed their heads. For years, they had lived under Mark's shadow, walking on eggshells. Today, they saw a new dawn. Julia paused at the door, turning back one last time. Power does not mean domination. True power is the strength to stand firm with grace. That is how I will lead. Mark looked up then, his eyes red, his voice breaking. "Julia, please, don't leave me like this. Give me another chance." Her heart tightened. This was the man who had spat on her, mocked her, discarded her. Now he begged, broken and small. Julia stepped closer, her voice quiet but cutting. "I forgive you, Mark, but forgiveness does not mean return. You chose your path, and now you must walk it." She turned and walked out, the doors closing behind her with finality. Outside, as the golden morning light spilled across the lobby, Julia lifted her head high. The empire was hers, her dignity restored, and for the first time in years, she felt truly free. The morning after her stunning takeover, Julia walked into the company headquarters, not as the humiliated wife everyone once pitied, but as the rightful majority owner. The building seemed to buzz differently. Staff who once avoided her gaze now straightened and greeted her with respect. "Good morning, Mrs. Daniels," the receptionist said softly, almost reverently. Julia smiled, not with arrogance, but with calm warmth. "Good morning, Sarah. Thank you." In the boardroom, directors rose to their feet when she entered. "Mrs. Daniels," one of them said, "your father would be proud. We're ready to follow your lead." Julia set down her folder and looked around the room. "We will rebuild trust. No more reckless risks, no more decisions made to feed one man's pride. We'll reinvest in our people, our workers, our communities. A company's true strength lies in those who build it from the ground up." The directors nodded, relief visible in their faces. For years, they had lived under Mark's bluster and arrogance. Now they saw hope. Meanwhile, down the hall, Mark lingered like a ghost, ignored and irrelevant. Staff passed by without greeting him. Anna's absence was louder than words. She had vanished from his side as if she'd never existed. His once commanding presence had shrunk into a hollow shell. Julia toured the offices, speaking with employees. She listened more than she spoke. She shook hands, asked about their work, their families. Her humility disarmed them, her sincerity inspired them. Slowly, word spread through the company. Julia wasn't just an owner, she was a leader. Later that week, she stood at a press conference. Cameras flashed. Journalists leaned forward as she spoke into the microphone. "This company," Julia said firmly, "is not just a business. It is a legacy of fairness, of dignity, of opportunity. I will not lead with cruelty or arrogance. I will lead with justice. Together, we rise." The applause was thunderous, louder and more genuine than any Mark had ever received. Back in his empty office, Mark sat slumped at his desk, staring at old newspaper clippings of his so-called victories. His reflection in the glass looked nothing like the king he once imagined himself to be. For the first time, he realized the truth. His empire had never been his. It had always belonged to Julia. But Julia didn't dwell on his downfall. Her eyes were fixed forward, on growth, on fairness, on legacy. She had been humiliated, spat upon, mocked, betrayed. Yet, from the ashes of that humiliation, she had risen stronger than ever. That evening, as Julia returned home, she found Mark waiting on the porch in the cold rain, his suit rumpled, his eyes desperate. He dropped to his knees before her. "Julia, I can't live without you, please! Take me back!" The rain poured hard, drenching the porch as Julia stepped from her car. There, kneeling in the puddles, was Mark. His suit clung to his body, soaked and rumpled, his once-groomed hair plastered to his forehead. The man who had once spat on her in front of family now bowed in the mud before her. "Julia," His voice cracked, trembling like a broken child. "Please, forgive me. I was a fool. I don't want Anna. I don't want the company. I just want you. Take me back. I'll change. I promise." Julia stood under her umbrella, watching him. The neighbors across the street peeked from behind curtains. Two staff members on their way out stopped in the driveway, whispering to each other, stunned. The scene was undeniable. Mark Daniels, the arrogant king, reduced to a beggar. "Stand up, Mark," Julia said softly. "You're humiliating yourself." He shook his head violently, clutching at her dress hem. "No, I deserve this. I deserve worse. I spat on you. I cursed you. I betrayed you. But please, don't leave me like this. Give me one more chance." Memories flashed through Julia's mind. The dinner table spit, Anna sneaking in her study, Samuel's sneers, his mother's cruel words. Every humiliation pressed on her heart like thorns. And yet, she remained calm. "Do you remember the night you spat on me?" Julia asked quietly. Mark froze. "Julia, please, you told me I was nothing, that without you I was worthless." Her eyes locked with his, steady and sharp. "And now? Who is nothing, Mark? Who is worthless?" He sobbed openly, collapsing at her feet. "Me, I am. But I can change, Julia. I'll be a better man if you just give me one chance." Julia bent down slightly, her tone gentle but unyielding. "Mark, love is not begging. Love is not cruelty. Love is not arrogance. You killed what we had when you chose to humiliate me for applause." His hands trembled as he reached for her. "Please, I'll do anything." "Anything." The staff exchanged glances. One whispered, "This is justice. She doesn't even need to raise her voice." Julia pulled her hand free and stepped back. "I forgive you, Mark, but forgiveness is not the same as return. You've lost me. You've lost the company. You've lost the right to call yourself my husband." Her words cut deeper than any slap. Mark collapsed fully to the ground, his sobs drowned out by the rain. Julia turned toward the door. As she stepped inside, she whispered to herself, "Humiliation began at a dinner table. Tonight, it ends on my doorstep." And she closed the door behind her, leaving Mark in the storm. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows of the boardroom as Julia addressed the directors once more. There was no tension now, no nervous glances or whispered doubts. The atmosphere had shifted entirely. Calm, respectful, hopeful. "Gentlemen and ladies," Julia began, her voice steady, "we've survived arrogance, recklessness, and betrayal. Now we build anew. Our foundation will not be pride, but dignity. Not cruelty, but fairness. We will invest in people, not just profits." The directors applauded warmly, relief clear in their eyes. They had been shackled by Mark's hubris. Julia's vision freed them. After the meeting, Julia walked through the open office floor. Employees stood as she passed, some applauding, some smiling with genuine gratitude. A young accountant stopped her nervously. "Mrs. Daniels, thank you for giving us hope again." Julia's smile was gentle. "No, thank you. Without your work, this company has no heartbeat. Together, we'll make sure no one here ever feels discarded." Her words rippled through the office like sunlight breaking after a storm. That evening, Julia stood in her garden, the air filled with the scent of blooming roses. She knelt to water them, her hands steady, her face peaceful. For years she had tended this garden quietly, finding solace while enduring Mark's cruelty. Now it symbolized something new. Her rebirth. From behind the fence she heard voices. Neighbors whispered about the change. "Did you see her? She commands the company now. Mark is finished." Another voice replied, "She carries herself like a queen, but with kindness." Julia didn't turn to correct them. She didn't need a crown. Her dignity was enough. Inside the house, Mark sat alone in the guest room, a shadow of himself. He stared at the walls, ignored, stripped of power, begging for scraps of the life he once mocked. Julia passed his door without pause. She had no desire for revenge and cruelty. His downfall was punishment enough. Instead, she opened the front door to greet the staff returning from errands. She thanked them by name, asked about their families. Small gestures, but ones that built loyalty stronger than any contract. Later, she sat at her desk, opening her journal. She wrote the final words of her private record. "They spat on me. They mocked me. They thought I was powerless. Today I walk in dignity, and they kneel in the dust." Justice is complete. As she set down her pen, a knock came at the door. Julia rose, already knowing who it was. Mark stood outside once again, his face pale, his hands trembling, his voice breaking. "Julia, I have nothing left. Please, don't let me die alone." The evening air was cool as Julia opened the door. Mark stood on the porch, gaunt and broken. His once polished shoes were scuffed, his suit wrinkled beyond recognition. The proud man who had once spat on her at the family dinner table now trembled like a child, clinging to the last thread of hope. "Julia," he whispered, his voice hoarse, "I have nothing left. No company, no friends. Anna's gone. Even my family has turned their backs on me. You're all I have. Please, don't let me die alone." Julia studied him for a long moment. Memories flashed before her. The spit on her cheek, the laughter of his family, the whispers of betrayal, the circle of wolves mocking her. And then, the moment she had risen, folder in hand, turning humiliation into power. She stepped outside, letting the door rest gently behind her. "Mark," she said softly, "I don't hate you. Hatred only chains me to the past. I've forgiven you." Hope flickered in his eyes. Then you'll take me back?" Julia shook her head gently, her voice calm but resolute. "Forgiveness does not mean return. I've moved forward. My life is no longer yours to break. You had your chance, and you destroyed it. What's left now is only pity." Mark's face crumpled, his knees buckling. He fell onto the steps, sobbing openly. The man who once ruled with arrogance now wept in the dirt, stripped of every illusion of power. Julia bent slightly, her eyes kind but unwavering. "You taught me something, Mark. You showed me what cruelty looks like. And because of that, I chose to live by its opposite. I will lead with grace, with justice, with dignity. That is my legacy, not you." She straightened, lifting her chin toward the dark sky. "Goodbye, Mark. May you find peace one day, far from me." With that, she turned and walked back inside, closing the door gently but firmly. Mark remained on the porch, his cries echoing into the night, unheard and unanswered. Inside, Julia stood in the quiet warmth of her home. She touched the folder on her desk, then looked out toward her blooming garden. She had been humiliated, spat on, cast out as worthless. But now she was whole, strong, and free. The story had ended not with vengeance, but with dignity, not with cruelty, but with grace. And that was the sweetest victory of all.